Give me the cheese, boy. I need it for my old because I'm old and my old.
I'm going to test the theory by comparing the incomes and costs of both countries. Over 500,000 Kiwis now live in Australia, and according to the latest statistics, this is needed to test the theory of whether Australia is better. I was in Sydney just last month, so I have the latest numbers to test the theory. So let's first compare incomes. Data across both countries is a bit spotty, so we'll take the national averages. Over in Australia, there's a statistic States, the average full-time worker. Similarly, States, a full-time worker earns just $1,651 a week. Accounting for the exchange rate, New Zealand's average wage falls to just $1,509 a week, lower than Australia by 26%. Both data points are from governmental statistics sources. Averages include just full-time workers and include all ordinary and overtime income data. Averages might be problematic and median might work better, but in this context, they're very comparable. So Australia is a clear winner on the income side of things. But of course, there are other things to consider alongside income. For starters, tax. As you can see here, Australia and New Zealand both have different income tax tables. If we take a $100,000 income in New Zealand and compare it to the equivalent in Australian dollars, this is what we get. In New Zealand, we deduct the income tax and ACC, giving us a take-home income of $75,452 a year. Over in Australia, we take off income tax and Medicare, giving us $71,379. Now if we convert the Kiwi dollars to Aussie dollars, we're left with just $68,980 a year, 3.4% less than the Aussies. So on an income of around 90,000 Australian dollars or less, we'll be paying less tax than you would on the same income in New Zealand. Assuming in Australia the super is added on top of the salary and adjusting the Kiwi saver in New Zealand too, the difference in incomes at 100,000 Kiwi dollars a year widens to a substantial 11 points.
Give me Hydra, Cyclops. Give me Hydra. I know I've been paid to scare me, but give me Silence and Cyclops. Give me Hydra. I know I've been paid to scare me.
Both the Australian tax rate widens to 2 by 6 cents each. And finally, kumara, zucchini and mushrooms are all cheaper in Australia. All up, fruits and vegetables come in 10% cheaper over in Australia, with 12 of the 20 items compared being lower priced. Moving along,
got it! Nice!
29% cheaper.
Yay!
UHT carton of milk too.
I found it! Nice!
Bottles of cream are slightly cheaper in New Zealand by 6 cents, as is butter by 51
victory
cents
dance.
a block. Mozzarella cheese is 21% cheaper in Australia, and tasty cheese too by 8%. Chobani yogurt is lower in New Zealand by about 19 cents a carton, and a tray of eggs is 14% cheaper in Australia. Obella dips are 18% cheaper in New Zealand, and frozen fries are 16 cents lower in Australia. Frozen peas are 27% cheaper in New Zealand, hash browns 28% cheaper in Australia, and that rounds out our refrigerated and freezer section. Once again, Australia is cheaper by about 9%, consistently lining up with our prior to
we got two
Unfortunately, the pantry section continues the trend, with all
1,
of these
2, 3,
items
4,
averaging out
5,
to an
6, 7,
11%
8,
lower
9,
price
10,
in Australia.
12,
So to
13,
summarize
14.
the findings in the
2
grocery
out of
aisle,
14
purchasing 50
secrets.
items in Woolworths in New Zealand would have set you back
I mean 15 secrets, yeah.
In the
And
Australian Woolworths,
I
it would
forgot
cost
to
us
get
$418,
the
9% less than in New Zealand.
Guardiani.
19 of the 50 items were priced
Maggiani
lower in New
Tankiani.
Zealand, and the remaining 31
Oh my
were priced
God.
lower in Australia. So Aussie,
Bro, oh
lower
my
priced
god,
groceries.
this is too
The
fast.
next area of cost
Come
I want
here.
to explore between
Give me my
countries is
soul.
housing. According to CoreLogic, the median house price in Sydney
This
is
is
just
too
under
fast.
1.2 million Australian dollars. Brisbane,
Ooh.
Canberra, Adelaide, and Perth
Hold on.
Trail
Let me try
sit
that.
around
Let me try
the
that.
$800,000 to $900,000 mark. According to local partners here in New Zealand, Auckland's median sits at just over $1 million.
I'll try
Once
this one.
converted, it
You
sits
guys
at
get out.
$918,000 Australian dollars. If Auckland was in Australia, it would have the second highest city
Sorry,
median
bro.
price.
But you have to
explore the
be
cost of
deleted.
service and mortgage
I wonder what
in
this
both
do.
countries. Taking the table of
Ooh.
Australia's median house prices by city and Auckland representing New Zealand's highest median prices,
Ooh.
let's overlay
Ooh.
that with the latest rates, assuming
Okay.
a 20% deposit. ANZ
Okay.
currently charges
Okay.
Australian
And-
borrowers a 6.99% variable rate, and in New Zealand, the same rate goes to
Ooh.
6.89%.
I got my tail yesterday. Like now. Bulbito, bandito, tractorito.
Lower payments on the median home, with Brisbane coming in closest with just 1.6% lower repayments than in Auckland. The housing mix
Okay, now-
is likely to
okay,
be
now
similar
this is
between
getting hard.
Australia
This
and
is
New
getting
Zealand.
hard, bro.
So as a general statement,
Kill
house ownership is more
10
affordable
bosses.
in Australia, with the exception
This will be
of
easy as
Sydney.
hell.
Let's now take a look at rent. Here is the median
Cocodrilo
rent
for my
paid
Diyos.
in each of Australia's main centres. Sydney tops the list at $775 a week, while
Nice.
the others sit between $580 and
Okay.
$680 a week. Using tenancy
Mountain,
services data in
Ambalabu.
Auckland, the median for a 3-bedroom house, assuming that in itself is about average, is 795 New Zealand dollars a week. In Australian dollars, for comparative purposes, this drops to $703
And it will give me
a week.
4 XP.
This places Auckland squarely behind Sydney, but much higher than every other city in Australia. So if you're renting, New Zealand is likely to be a more expensive place than Australia. Unless you're looking at
Mangiani,
Sydney. So
Tankiani.
we've looked at housing and grocery costs.
So we'll wait
Next
for
up is transport, starting with
30
public
minutes.
transport. In Sydney, catching a train
So-
for roughly 5 to 6 kilometres from Circular Quay to McDonald Town
So we'll
Station
reach
costs
to the
$2.94
next
in Australian dollars.
guy over here.
In Auckland,
The
from
third.
Britomart to Newmarket would cost $2.80 for the same distance, or an equivalent
Somebody
of
tell
$2.55
me
in Australian dollars.
when
So
will
for
give
a
me
short
a
train ride,
smile.
Auckland is 13% less expensive. If, on the other hand, the journey was about 12 kilometres, Sydney would cost $3.65 to Croydon Station, or Auckland would cost $4.65 out to Ellerslie. Accounting for the exchange rate, Auckland is now 16% more expensive as compared to Sydney when we look at longer journeys. Catching a ferry
67.
from Circular Quay to
67.
Brisbane takes roughly 12
67.
minutes. $7.13 per journey. In Auckland, Britomart to Birkenhead, a 13-minute journey, would cost $7.40 or $6.73 in Australian dollars. So a short trip
Two-
on Auckland ferries would cost
two
around
things.
6% less than in Sydney. So for public transport, Auckland comes out on top for shorter journeys and ferry rides, or for longer trips, Sydney comes out on top. The other side of transport is the cost of owning a car. A Hyundai Tucson would cost around $44,990
Oh, what happens if I
in New
fart?
Zealand to drive away. In Australia, the same car would cost $40,990
With the
Australian
hammer.
dollars, or $45,076 in New Zealand dollars. Just $86 more. A four-lane wild track, also like for like, would cost $76,990 in New Zealand. And $76,627 in Australia. So normal returns are about the same.
Diamond,
But once we
diamonds.
convert into
How to
US
get
dollars, in
diamonds?
Australia, it would cost $84,267.
Get
This
these
comes
out of
out
here.
to around 7,000 New Zealand dollars more than if you bought the car in New Zealand. So new cars look to be at least as expensive in Australia as they are in New Zealand. Annual registration fees in New South Wales are $79, plus a vehicle tax, which for the average car around 1.5 tonne would be around $374 a year. So if you add those up,
Oh,
it
it
would
takes
cost
so long
around
to get the-
$450 a year, excluding inspection and plate fees. In New Zealand, we only have an annual registration fee of $135
This is a long one.
a year. Fuel, on the other hand, is a lot more expensive in New
Okay,
Zealand.
almost
Just
there.
outside Sydney CBD,
Since when did I get diamonds?
charges $1.85
Since when
per
did
litre for 90
Right.
and for diesel $1.92. In Auckland, just outside
Since when did I
CBD,
get
in
diamonds?
Newmarket, BP charges $2.72 per litre for
Oh,
91
wait.
and
wait.
$2 for diesel. Adjusting
Wait, they
for exchange
added
rates in New
diamonds there?
Zealand, 91 fuel costs 62 Australian
Oh,
cents
to
more
kill
than in Sydney,
people.
while Sydney charges 10 cents a litre more for diesel. So overall, transport costs are fairly even between Australia and New Zealand. There are some things cheaper in New Zealand, like registration, cars, and short-distance public transport, while in Australia, fuel and long-distance public transport are cheaper. Now we reach our final category, utilities. In Auckland, using 1,000 litres of water a week would come at an annual cost of $573.48, including a fixed charge, water and wastewater. For the
Water.
same usage, Sydney charges a fixed $67.60 for drinking water, $623.56 for wastewater, and $88.92 for stormwater. The variable rate for 1,000 litres a week comes to just $138.84. Converting this to New Zealand dollars, it comes to $1,010.54,
Okay.
or 78% more than in Auckland. Moving along now to electricity for all
14 hours.
energy. If you use around 10.7 kilowatt hours a day, or $3,900 a year, you'd spend an annual $1,439. In Sydney, using Origin Energy as an example, you'd pay roughly $1,628 a year, or in Kiwi dollars, $1,790. This is 24% more expensive than in New Zealand. For internet, Contact charges $85 a month for 300 megabits down and 100 up. In Sydney, they have 3 to 5 times slower speeds for $105 a month. So Australia is 36% more expensive when it comes to broadband plans, and much worse ones at that. So across all major household utilities, Auckland comes out between 24 and 76% better off as compared to Sydney. If you want to take a closer look at the difference in salaries between New Zealand and Australia, make sure to check this video out here. Below that is another looking at Australia's top 5 super funds. Please make sure to subscribe down below, and I look forward to catching you on the next one. Cheers.
Ang ano kasi nila yan, yung
I'm gonna get the
sa ila ba retirement pala. Ang sa Australia, pag hindi ko, yung ila tawag yung super.
Ano super?
Yung ano yan parang kagaya ba sa atin sa SSS? Yung
I'm gonna try to get
match ng ano mo, ng employer
get
mo.
new.
Diba sa atin, halimbawa, doble, diba? Halimbawa, mahulog ka ng 1,000. Ang ginahulog sa iyong employer is 2,000 plus. Ganon, diba? So, yun yung magiging ano po sa pension mo. Ang ilad ang sa Australia is mas mataas. Ang sa ano kasi yung sa KiwiSaver, parang 3% lang yata. 3% lang ang share sa iyong employer. Kaya pag is ano mo, parang yung mas mataas yung Australia. Parang mas madami kayong ma-share sa'yo yung employer. Ang New Zealand kasi mahal yung mga ano niya kasi 'di ba? Parang malayo siya ba? Kaya yung mga goods nga nila parang 'di ba Saturday mag-order ka Lazada, parang next day, 2 days, 3 days sa na 'di ba? Maabot na mo. Pero yung doon mag-order ka daw sa mga Amazon, ganyan. 2 weeks, ganyan. Parang kulang pa yan na ano.
Okay, nice.
Parang ganun siya balaya katagal mo bago makuha mo yung balik. Kasi nga, ano siya di ba, hulong doon. Tapos yun nga daw, ang ano nila, yung New Zealand, ang disadvantage siya pag gusto mo mag-travel to different countries,